Good
A
evening,
younger
sir.
face, okay.
Sir, good evening. I am Prabha Shukil from India. I am MDM students. And sir, I just want to ask you, sir, you have discussed in your lecture that the third world countries being the exporter of the primary products faces the more terms of trade volatility. And that's for that, actually, this contributes in increasing the gap. And you have just in the end, you have suggested that from shifting to the primary products to the labor-intensive manufacturing can actually reduce this gap, the gap which is causing the gap between the third world country and the first world country and the rich countries. And I was just thinking that what lesson should a country like India or the many other countries which are mainly started as a primary product exporter, what lesson and what policy implication should be taking into account this fact to shift from the primary products to the manufacturing products, and taking into account the social and the cultural situation of that country, how to just converge these two things, just to act the trade as an engine of growth and to combine their cultural and the present structure there. And sir, what I think, sir, shifting from them, sir, it's to me just I'm thinking that it is something like opposite of the age-old comparative advantage theory. It is just it's the shifting from their original product to the manufacturing product, isn't, sir, they are shifting from their comparative advantage theory. So that's how to, sir, reconcile these two things. Thank you, sir.
That's a long question. I think there are a lot of questions. And I can't possibly answer them all, but let me tell you a story, an Indian story. So you can see how complex the world is. The standard view, at least of the history that I read of India, is that it's the British that did it. It's their fault. And I read the history very differently. I think it's India's fault. And here's what I mean. In 1750, as I pointed out an hour or so ago, 1750, India was the dominant textile exporter in world markets. At least 3/4 of total traded textiles were produced by India. So it had the technology. It was labor intensive, of course. It was cottage industry. But it was exceedingly efficient, and the labor was cheap. And the British couldn't match them until they raised their own tariff barriers to keep them out. But when the level playing field in free markets, the Indian Ocean or the Atlantic economy, they won. And then they lost. Over 50 years, they lost their hold on those world markets and retreated behind their own borders. Whose fault was that? Was that because the British underwent an industrial revolution? No, we're talking about 1750 to 1800. There's no big industrial revolution taking place in textiles yet. What's going on? What's going on is that India is losing its competitive edge. And it's losing its competitive edge because the price of labor is soaring. And the price of labor is soaring because the price of food is soaring. And the price of food is soaring because agricultural productivity is deteriorating. It's India's fault. So we have to understand why that happened. And now we're talking about politics, the decline of the Mughal Empire, and all of that. We're back to culture and institutions as driving force. And I think that episode is much more important in understanding Indian performance than looking at the 19th century when the British invade India with textiles and keep India from raising tariffs and so on. It was already done. India had already lost its edge and its competitive skill. And it had to find it all over again. Well, now it's found it. A little late, but now they found it with a vengeance. So, you know, these things can reverse, and can reverse quite dramatically. And it requires a lot of things being right, including policy and institutions.